Hello, we're here with Felix, who's going to show us how to create comic books in Photoshop.
Cool, very cool. How's it going, guys?
Lance, how you doing? Ray, how you doing?
Doing all right.
All
How's
right.
that coronavirus treating you lately?
It's a scary time.
It is, and now they're saying mid-May. As of today.
LA extended itself to mid-May already today.
Yeah, they're walking it because New York City, is New York City, and they don't want to lose money, so they don't want to scare these stockbrokers and all these people with their shares. A friend of mine just was buying Boeing because he said Boeing is now $10 a share. It's usually $300 a share.
Mhm.
So he's saying that to buy the airlines because they're going to jump up after this is over. I was like, well,
I don't know.
Boeing had a whole bunch of jets grounded before the coronavirus. So I don't know.
Is your comic book still coming out right now?
Yeah, I just finished Punchline number 3 yesterday. I'm going to put that online in next week sometime.
No,
The
and
Trump
then the
book.
one with Tom.
Oh, no, Tom, yeah, that one just debuted on the 15th, and those stores are open, so you can buy it. But now you can order it online through my website, BronxHeroesComicCon.com. You'll get it faster. Or you can, because the offices are now closed for Arsenal Pulp, you can order it, and I think that they do have their shipping mechanism going on. And Amazon has copies already, so if you do Amazon, you can get it immediately.
Mhm.
But if you order it through my site, Bronx Heroes, Google Bronx Heroes or bxhcc.com, which stands for Bronx Heroes Comic Con, you'll get it in a day or two. Because I have those copies here. I have some access here. So Canada is on lockdown. So.
Right. And the name of that comic book is?
The Bronx Heroes in Trumpland. I'm actually working on the sequel right now.
Mhm.
We're doing some. I made the Corona Beast. He's gonna be.
Yeah, they've, it could have been, if Bernie had gotten the nomination, it could have been Trumpland versus the Sanders Man.
All right.
Yeah.
So I'm going to show you this new character that I've been working on. DC Comics and I are currently in debates. There's no lawsuit as of yet. I just sent them another cease and desist because they sent me my other one unopened. So I'm shipping them. I just, right here, sent them a cease and desist to their New York law offices, but now they're being taken care of by an LA office. It seems to be somewhat in-house, their law firm now. So Punchline is a character that I created for DC Comics 15 years ago. We spoke about it in one of the previous episodes. For DC Comics as a Joker villainess, now she's being debuted. I'm really annoyed about it because I already revamped the character back in 2010 for a comic book World Without Superheroes, which I was sued in 2010 by DC Comics. And for the word superhero was a trademark war. And now I was developing this summer past already the first issue of Punchline, and I was literally debuting it the same week that they announced that Punchline as a Joker villain, which really irritated me because that was my idea that was solicited to them, or to an editor who I thought was a friend of mine. So ever since that happened, we've been in talks over email, but we're still very much not eye to eye on where this is going to land. They're going full throttle. Now they're talking about Punchline movie, which is really annoying. Like the first issue hasn't even dropped yet. They did like a preview issue that went viral where she appears in 2 panels. That book is selling as high as $150 now. A $4 comic book, and that irritates me to no end.
Yeah, I'm sure that's unbelievable.
Because they plan to basically not pay me a cent. This guy was a prominent DC Batman editor. When I showed it to him at a comic convention, and we talked about the character, and it was a number of characters, and not just that one, but that was the one that I was actually physically working on this past summer as a comic book punchline #1, and now we have this thing happening. The preliminaries to either a negotiation or we're negotiating terms. We're not in court yet, but it most likely will turn to court if they plan to fucking make a movie about this thing. I'm going to go full throttle on it, and I'll spend whatever I have to spend to fight them. You know, so well, I'm going to draw a punchline for you. This is a new look that I've designed for her. In the first issue, she looked one way, and this is a flashback. The second issue, she's a clown detective. It was a ridiculous concept, but I was like, why not? How about doing a film noir story of a detective who's a clown, right? And why not? If we believe in superheroes and worlds of superheroes, there was a movie when I was younger, in my 20s, that I saw. It was called Shakes the Clown. You guys ever seen that movie?
Was that Bob Goldthwait?
Yeah. It's like, that movie had me rolling so hard because it was a comedy, but it was actually a PSA on alcoholism. I don't know if you guys ever got that.
Yeah, that wasn't that when he was like trying to be serious, you know,
Yeah.
by
Yeah.
you know, and then he eventually not in that, but I think he eventually let go of that whole character that he used to do.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
know,
that was
the-
the
you know,
last
like-
gasp of that character.
Yeah, because then because that
And,
was when he was actually like briefly competing with Sam Kinison to be the
Yeah.
screaming comedian.
Yeah, Sam Kinison, didn't he get hit by a truck or something like that?
He was
He died?
driving in '92, yeah, and was killed
Yeah.
right after he supposedly had kicked drugs and alcohol.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Yeah, well, it's a nice.
Nice sentiment.
He got clean, and then he.
Yeah, I heard that story before. I had an uncle who died in prison. They said he got clean. And I was like, yeah, right. The guy was a freaking.
Well, it's a moving story, you know.
Addicts are always clean. That's their running story. I'm getting better. I'm cleaning up.
Well, it was like David Lee Roth when he was in Van Halen had maybe the greatest quote. He says, I used to have a drug problem, but now that I'm rich and famous, it's not a problem at all.
Right. Yeah. If you got money to afford it, it's not a problem.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, that was.
Maybe a liability, but it's not a problem. It's like it's not the same thing.
Okay, well, looking forward to seeing what you got there in front of you.
All right, so let's crank this out. I got this digital screen. Usually I'm a traditional hand artist, and I can show you some of that stuff later on. All right, so usually I'll start with a blue line. Like traditionally back in the day. So I'm just going to do something really rough, like a rough circle like that. And then I'll just put my crosshairs there. So I'm just making like an avocado shape.
Mhm.
That's basically what you want to get. And I'll just drop a line for the neck. You just want to get your basic structure out. You don't have to be so tight with it. So I'm just kind of like doing like a sketchy type of thing with the horns. And it looks like shit right now, and that's okay. So I'm trying to just get like a rough idea as to where this character is going to be at. And this is almost like an underpainting or a drawing with a sketch. If I was doing this with a pencil, it's kind of the same concept of just rough sketching first to get all your things in place. I don't believe in drawing tight because you kind of lose all the emotion and the power and the speed is in that rough draft, that initial draft that you're cranking out. Then, you have to make adjustments. You start, maybe this jaw's a little too long there. But I always kind of start with a avocado shape, later. See that big brother there? They've been trying to get me to, I disconnected all my devices from the iCloud because they fill up all your devices with the same information repeatedly, so that you have to pay them to
For extra space. Yeah.
for extra space. Those devils.
Mhm.
So this is Punchline in a devil costume, talking about devils. Whoops, wrong. Keep hitting the wrong keyboard. I got my layer here. I'm going to make a new layer. And I'm going to start drawing on top of this blue line. What I'm going to do with the blue line, I'm going to fade it out so it's lighter. And now I'm no longer going to draw in blue. I'm going to start drawing in black.
So how long have you been using the software, Felix?
I started using Photoshop way back in the 90s when they first came out. I wasn't drawing digitally then. I was just coloring, and I was using Illustrator and so forth back then. This is really irritating. Let me switch pens. I have two. I work on two Wacom tablets simultaneously, so I'll work some here, and then I'll do some on this other one here. So the other pen must be close by. That's why it's not. Oh, there we go. It's not deselecting. So here we go. So let me hide this layer again. Try to hide this window. Now I'm going to go into my colors, my color palette here, my swatches. I'm going to go into black. All right. Or I could just hit the letter D on the keyboard too. That'll turn my palette black. And now I'm going to go over, and now I'm going to zoom in, and then try to refine what I drew before. I mean, honestly, it depends. When I was younger, I preferred to work under a female. As I gotten older, you know, I prefer to work under a man. But it depends. It all depends, you know.
Mhm.
It all depends on what you're doing. It depends on the type of female. Some women are, you know, nurturing, or like, you know, kind of cool,
Mhm.
and they don't stress you. That's
Yeah.
fine. But some dudes, I find power trip more now than women do. So sometimes it's annoying. With either male or female that are on a power trip, it drives me nuts.
Yeah,
I just
so
can't.
it's
I go to work to make a paycheck, not to get into a daily to do with people, and you know what I mean.
oh yeah. I mean, it's much easier, you know, when you don't deal with the alpha types.
Yeah, you know, because I'm not man enough for them. You know, it's like
Yeah, and it's I've found that I prefer softer personalities, whether they be a male or female. You know, as
yeah,
far
yeah,
as
exactly. I mean, you know, I find when I'm having conversations with other men, I don't relate to a lot of them because they're all about sports. I really don't care about sports. I wasn't an athlete. I mean, I was a coach,
Mhm.
and I coached sports later on in my life. But growing up, I wasn't really athletic. I was more of a cerebral
Mhm.
comic book guy. I mean, I worked out. I was into like muscle magazines and exercising and
Muscle and fitness.
Muscle and Fitness and the Joe Weider magazine and stuff
Mhm.
like that. But
Mhm.
I was never into. I mean, I always, whenever I watched the games, like I would go to baseball games, but I was not into playing baseball. I was more of a spectator, you know.
Mhm.
Um, I didn't
Same
really,
thing. Yeah.
yeah, you know, like I enjoyed baseball. I used to collect baseball cards, but you know, comic book cards took over. You know, it's like,
Mhm.
you know, the more I got into comics, the more I became more cerebral, wanted to write, you know, so I wanted to get into writing and then drawing. My brother was the artist in the house, but he got all the attention. So I was like, you know, nobody pays attention because I'm a writer. So maybe I should start drawing, and then end up going to art college and stuff, School of Visual Arts. And so did my brother. So we were kind of like in this secret company. Even though he was a senior in college, he got pressured to drop out, which, you know, my father's a blue collar guy. He's a numbskull. He spent all this money on the college education and tells him to drop out, you know, so it's kind of stupid.
Oh, he didn't even let him get the degree.
Yeah, he ended up getting it years later, like a decade later, went back to get it, but then he still didn't fulfill his dream of being a working artist.
Yeah, but I mean, you would think your dad would have wanted him to at least have a degree.
No, my father doesn't give a shit. He didn't care. He wanted him to be a nurse or so. You know, when you grow up in a military family, they want you to be military soldiers, and we were like the biggest disappointments. We were like,
Mm.
you know what I mean? Like, oh, you're not going to be a soldier. It's like, no.
Mm.
You know, you're raised being told what to do your entire life. Do I really want to spend my adulthood being told what to do by somebody else? Yeah, I think the military is good for those who need direction in life.
Mm.
You know, if you need to have the necessity to be told what to do or have no clue as to what you're going to do in life, not to insult soldiers, it's a career. But literally, I mean, that's when you're a young man and you're getting out of high school, you don't have any direction. The military is for you, you know, because what's the next step? You have to make a decision. And, you know, the military can give people guidance. It's a good thing. But I didn't need that. I already grew up with a soldier in the house. I didn't need to be told what to do by anybody else or get yelled at. The trick with these digital pens, it's all pressure sensitive.
Mm.
So you really got to make that line count. But what's good about it, it's easy to edit. Like, you know, you don't have to keep erasing over and over again.
Mm.
And then once I get, you can see the blue line still. Once I get into my back into my layers here, I can get rid of that blue line underneath, and you see how it's cleaned up. Then I can go back in and then erase that cheek a little bit, so I can bring her up, and I can literally trim away the face, any excess lines. But this is why this is the preference. I mean, I'm a purist when it comes to drawing by hand.
Mm-hmm.
But in order to get work and to get stuff quickly done and have a sleek professional look, people are corporate companies prefer the digital over the color. Oops.
And do you color digitally too, right? Or
Yeah. So I'm going to throw in some color on this headshot real quick. Let me just save it real quick. Double head. Yeah. Usually I save my layers and my files. So now I'm going to put this all together as one file. I'm going to select, hold down the shift and hold down all my layers. Command key. And then I'm going to hit Command G, put it all in one folder. This is locked, so I'm going to unlock that. Now I'll drop a new layer. And now my new layer is where I'm going to add my color in here. So I'll go back to my swatches. Usually I'll put a face with like an off-white, like a soft pink. And for the red costume here. So now we're going to work with a lot of different layers. I'm going to just throw in a darker red there, like a yeah.
do you just guesstimate the colors you're going to use, or you already know what the codes are?
Codes, yeah, I do know the codes. Usually when I'm working from page to page, whatever I establish on page one,
Mm-hmm.
I just continue to replicate those. You know, you can make your own palette, create your own palette on Photoshop, so you can go back to those colors directly. You don't have to guess back. Or you could just eye drop from page to page, which it all depends on what's faster, you know, in Illustrator. So now I'm underneath it. So imagine this is like animation, right? So I'm going to change my brush here to a less refined brush just so I can get a wider area. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. And I'm going to just drop a flat color of red in here real quick. So now I'm doing like coloring book mode, like when we were kids, and just trying to stay in the lines. You know, so I don't have to be really neat about it. Just have to stay in those lines. I can go over her face, and then, oops, stop moving. There we go. I hit the space bar. It gives me this little hand cursor. So I just go in there, fill this in. You know, and you know when you're doing page after page, you're doing like a typical comic book has 24 pages. You know, when you're doing a series, 24 pages can easily turn into a few hundred pages if you're doing more than one issue, you know. Like her first story arc is going to be 4 issues. I already did 3 issues. You know, the writer's rule, so you should know your ending before you get there.
You still follow like a 3-act structure for it? Or?
Oh yeah, same thing. Yeah, I like to start with flashbacks, but I'm trying to change up my writing style.
Mm.
I always like to write in like flash forward mode and then go back into flashback. I saw that in a lot of movies growing up. So now I'm gonna make another layer. So now I'm gonna paint. I just added another layer on there, and I'm gonna start painting her face. This is her clown color. She's actually a Latin character, so she's dark skinned, but her face is painted like she's clown white. But then I didn't want to just put a plain white thing there, so I just make it like a pinkish color, and then I'll use like
Yeah, it's almost like the rock band Kiss kind of look.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and there's a lot of influences behind this character. You know, in this devil look, I was inspired by Betty Page because I was a big Betty Page fan growing up. And then what else? So I'm gonna hit the black and white. Yeah, and then there was when my sister, when I was in college, I barely came home from school, and she had this little doll that she was throwing away, and I tore the hair off the doll, and I sculpted some devil horns on it. The Sculpey clay and painted it, and I covered the face in blood and hung it upside down on the door. So she was just like, "What the fuck are you doing, my doll?" You know, it's like.
How old was she when you?
She was probably like 20.
Okay, so she wasn't of an age where that would have done some psychological damage.
The damage is already done.
Okay.
So it's like, and she has like bluish eyes. Let's see, like that. And then I don't usually draw that many Caucasian characters like when I was younger, you know, because we grew up with so many Caucasian characters, but now everything's like diversity. And it's a good opportunity to draw people of different, you know, ethnic backgrounds and stuff. So I'm like, why not? You know, it's fun. You know, it's like, it never bothered me when I was a kid to, you know, like a lot of people like to say, I do a lot of panels and stuff. People say they always look for themselves in the comic book, you know, like something they can identify with. And I understand that, but that was never my thing. I mean, if I read Batman and Robin, I was Robin, and then as I got older, I was Nightwing, and then eventually I became Batman himself, you know, or like Superman. I saw, but no matter what I watched or read, I could relate to those characters. It's later generations, I guess, you know, people
Yeah, I think when they
more
cast,
narcissistic. Is this society? What did you say about cats?
What do you say about being more narcissistic as a
Yeah, we're more
society?
narcissistic. Yeah, we are. I mean,
Right,
'cause it's like whenever there was a Hispanic character, like, you know, Zorro was probably the coolest one, but I mean, everything else, it's like, yeah, whatever. It's like these DC characters, whenever they came up with a Hispanic character, it was always corny, and it was just like, it was like, this is embarrassing. Yeah, but they create a Puerto Rican character, and he'll talk like if he's Mexican. They, you know, yeah, these old guys thinking, oh yeah, we'll create and they're doing the same thing now. It's all about demographics and just widening their market. They don't really care about, you know, people. So what I'm using now is a burn tool, and you can see it's doing it a little uneven. But what I'll usually just try to get like a tone in there somewhere, and then I'll just go back to the brush and then start using that brush to color in the shades. And then we also use like different layers. I don't know if we have enough time, but we usually do our highlights in layers. We don't usually do it on the same level here.
But normally there's a comic book writer, artist, someone draws it first, and then don't you have an inker that comes in later?
Yeah, that's true. All the assignments are designated to different roles, but I do everything myself. It's still the case in most cases. I do everything myself, though. Occasionally, I'll hire an artist. I've worked with different artists, like Paris Cullins, who worked on Blue Beetle and created Blue Devil for DC.
Mhm.
And I've worked with a lot of different artists, through the years, like Trevor Von Eden, who created Black Lightning, and Gary Cohn, and he used to do, he created Amethyst. I work with a lot of different writers and artists, but I prefer to, usually, I venture off and do these pet projects, or if I'm running out of time, if I want to focus my attention on one story and I get someone else to focus on the other. But sometimes it doesn't turn out that way. Sometimes you end up actually working harder because you're trying to, you think you're saving time by working with other creators, and then actually it takes up more time, especially specifically artists. When you're working with other writers, it's great because they give you a script, you just knock it out. But when you work with other artists, it's a pain in the ass because they're kind of in a hustle mode, a constant hustle mode, and you're working with them, but you're not their only client. They're working. It's like a construction worker. When you hire a guy to remodel your bathroom, and then he'll tear everything apart, and you won't see him for 6 weeks. You know what I mean? Comic book artists are kind of the same way. Hey, you tore up. You started this. You signed the contract. Where are you? Oh, I'm working on this other project. It's like, yeah, well, you're already given somewhat of an advance, so you need to get back onto this, and that's something weary. You have to be weary about. A lot of artists will take advances, and then they won't even complete your project, or they'll make you wait a year or two, just like that deck that you're trying to fix with the construction guy, and you know what I mean. And they're just taking advantage. They're hustlers, so you gotta make sure you don't get hustled, And I've been weary about that, So you see, I'm trying to create a highlight to the face, a little extreme, but then I'm gonna also get
Does this character have any special powers or?
No, she's a regular human. She has her special power is chain smoking. That's her ability. So this right now, she's kind of not really where I want it to be, but I feel a little pressure over here. I feel a little pressure drawing live. I don't usually draw live, but I'll just try to soften that up a little bit. Just want to soften up some of these lighted areas. All right, and now I'm going to add. So I just added. See, now if I hide that, you can see that the extreme and then the softer. Now add another layer, and I'm going to start adding darker shadows in there. So I'm going to go as dark as I can to try to create more definition in the face and create more contrast so that she's not so flat. And my palette usually when I'm drawing comics is very bright, but usually I try to create a contrast between the foreground and the background because you're really creating environments. It's all about creating the environment. I'll get a little bit darker. I'm being a little shy here. I'm on 38%. I'll bring it up to 61%. Trying to create more shadow and intensity in the eyes because this Italian artist I used to hang with from Italy said everything's in the hands and the eyes. You get the eyes and the face and the hands. Everything else you can fuck up on. So you want to get that. Then I'll go even a little darker. Maybe I'll switch it into that black and then reduce that black to 35%. Again, I get that. Oh, maybe it's a little too dark. Step back, I hold down the Option key and the letter Z. Go down to 10%. So I'll put a little bit of black in there. She's like a tough bitch, Like that smeared mascara. I want that intensity of the blue in the eye, that demonic blue eye, intense, scary, oh my God, this chick's gonna kill me. You want it to look a little tough. Then, there's a lot of rough edges in there, and then you can use your blur tool to blur it out. Just blur it out. And if you don't like it, you can just do it over. See, see the shadows there?
So just and the shadows what do they do for this? They just
create intensity on the face, and you see how flat she is there,
yeah.
and then you drop that in.
Oh, okay, so that layer basically.
Yeah, just creating that intensity, and then you can even manipulate the layer. I could go even darker, and then I could reduce the opacity on that layer. You know, so I think women are very tough. You know, they're delicate, but they're tough. You know, growing up in the Bronx, there's a lot of tough girls. You know. All right, so we got that done. And then, of course, you want to do the same for the back. I'll go back to the red. I'll drop in my burner tool here just for speed purposes and start adding in some of the highlights in that red.
The burner tool does...
like this is Photoshop was originally for photographs.
Right.
It's a burning and dodge tool I use for highlights. Now, like some people like to use the marching ants and lassos and then they'll section off their highlight area. That's not always necessary. Sometimes you can just freehand it just with the dodge and burn tool and just create those same highlights without all that hubbub. It serves its purpose. Let me get that there. Remember the lights there. So.
And use Photoshop rather than Illustrator.
I used to use more Illustrator than Photoshop, but it was just like you're literally drawing from scratch on the Illustrator. So Illustrator is now designated for lettering. I don't draw that much creatively on it. I mean, I used to work with this dude, and I used to design lamps for this company in Brooklyn, and I used to do a lot of graphic design stuff when I was younger with Illustrator. As I gotten older, I don't know. I mean, like this is a nice digital piece of artwork, but really, to my standards, it's shitty because I have
I mean, it looks like a real drawing, though. I mean, it's.
Yeah, it does. But it's like my comfortability.
Do you prefer doing this with pen or pencil, or do you want to basically work on a digital, platform?
Well, I think the digital platform is important to know because that's the times right now. That's what sells. If you want to work, if you want to get work in animation or like comics, they are pushing for the digital frontier. There's still a lot of professional artists that still draw by hand in comics, but commercials, everything, that's all digital now. No one's really. Some people are grandfathered into the hand drawing, but they really want. This is really the wave of where the comic art is commercial. It's not really it's not really an art. I mean, it is an art form, but it's commercial. It's a commercial art, and what's the object is to make money, and people draw digitally because it's fast. It gets the product out quickly, and you could edit quickly, and you could get everything done that you need to be done.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked with some like not in the creative field so much, but I've worked with like architects and engineers who were, you could say they were veterans,
right?
And they were, a lot of them were, like they had great technical knowledge, but they were draftsmen,
right?
And they actually would need people who weren't architects but knew were designers who knew AutoCAD,
right? Exactly.
To actually
just crank it out because that's what I even worked for the city of New York as a teenager. I was interning at the print shop in City Hall, so I saw all the new buildings that were going up in the city. I worked and cleaned out those machines that were printing out those blueprints for city plannings, and everything went into City Hall. All right, so basically, that's basically our. All right.
Well, that's amazing work you got there, Felix.
And then I'll just drop a background real quick. A background color. I could do like a flat color. Like I can crop it. Let's say I'll crop it tighter just to bring it in.
And that's actually a nice little piece of pop art.
Yeah, I love it's funny, when I was learning fine art in college, I really didn't like pop art, but as I got older and I got, as you study about That's why I love fine art actually a lot more than comics. But I tried doing the fine art route and realized it wasn't for me because it's not really about your art. It's like they say in art school, it's like who you know, who you do blow with, and who you blow, right? It's like, no thanks. Thank you guys.
Well, thanks. That was
That's how to draw the Bronx Heroes Way, right?
Yeah, thanks
all the inspiring.
Glad you were able to show us your comic book, and we'll try to get you on next time.